this has like a review question, x squared minus 9x equals negative 8. When we're solving this equation, you're finding what x equals. When you're solving this equation, you're finding what x equals. What are we finding in regards to the graph? We kind of talked about this yesterday. I'm skipping a bunch of steps. We're factoring. And you end up with 1 and 8. And those are the x-intercepts. On the graph. So if you do need to check your answers when you're doing your assignment, you could always use Desmos like we did in class yesterday and look at the x-intercepts. And of course, this is all going to have trigonometry, not just x's. So today's lesson is solving by factoring. So that's a big hint for you. We're going to factor every single one of these first. So we look for ways to factor. Remember, there are things like check for a greatest common factor first. If you can pull out a greatest common factor, it's going to be easier. We could factor by guess and check. We could do difference of squares. What do you do for those 4 terms? Grouping. The grouping, right. Factor by grouping. Right. So we have all those things we could try. Look at example 1. Not really numbered. 3 cosine squared x minus sine x cosine squared x. This has 2 terms. You cannot subtract things if they are not like terms, and these are not like terms. So I can't just subtract things and make stuff disappear. I need to use factoring. Is there a greatest common factor? There's a cosine squared in both terms. So we're going to undistribute that cosine squared x. When we undistribute it, we have 3 minus sine x left over. And now it's factored. And what do we do with each factor? Set equal to 0. Excellent. So we have cosine squared x equals 0. We also have 3 minus sine x equals 0. And now it's just like what you were doing for your assignment yesterday. We're just going to solve each part. So let's start with cosine squared x equals 0. How do we get rid of squared?
Square root.
But if I do the square root,
Plus minus.
I need plus minus.
Can't have plus minus 0.
I can't have a plus minus 0?
The same thing.
No. I mean, what's the square root of 0?
0.
So what's positive 0 and negative 0?
0.
Still 0. So because you're doing plus and minus 0, there really isn't 2 values. So you can do it. It's just 0. So then where's cosine of x equal to 0? And remember, if you get stuck, you could always draw a picture. Cosine, where's cosine 0? That's x. Where's x 0? X would be 0 up here, down there, the ordered pair, 0, 1, or 0, 1. We could rely on our picture if we needed to. All right, so that's half of it. How about the other half? How do we solve it? So add the sine x to the other side. Okay, 3 equals sine x. So where is sine x equal to 3? Sine is the y value. Unit circle.
Oh, don't tell me that.
Sine is y. What is the highest number that y could possibly be? What is the lowest number that y could possibly be? Can sine be equal to 3? Not possible. You cannot use this to find the answer. So we only have 2 answers. We've found them already, just those. So you will get situations where part of it gives you the answer, but the other part is useless information that does not give you the answer. Jake, question?
It says 3 minus sin x, so this is negative or something.
Well, we added sin x to both sides,
Oh, yeah.
just to move it. You could have subtracted the 3 and then had both sides be negative, then you have to divide by negative. Okay? Next one. Sin x squared plus 3x plus 2. So this is a what kind of polynomial? How many terms? Trinomial. Is there a greatest common factor?
Nope.
No. Not in all 3 terms. So then what way do we normally factor a trinomial? Right, guess and check. And if you need to rewrite this using like if it's easier for you to factor over here first and then write the answer with signs instead, you could do this if you want. This would be what? U plus 2 and U plus 1. But it's not U. What is it? Sin x plus 2 sin x plus 1. If you're not sure if you factored it correctly, you could FOIL it back together just to check. But it is factored, so now what do we do with our factors? Alright, so sin x plus 2 equals 0, and sin x plus 1 equals 0. And solve each one of these. Sin x equals negative 2. Where is sine equal to negative 2?
Not.
Not. So we're going to just throw that out. It's not useful. How about where is sine equal to negative 1?
3 pi over 2.
Only at 3 pi over 2. So we only have one answer. Now, you're doing this on your own. Your teacher's not here to help you. What could you do to just make sure you're doing it right?
I'll get back in.
How do you know you got all these?
Oh, graph.
You go to Desmos, type it in, and look at the x-intercepts. I am not. Desmos is free, and it is so useful. I use it a lot. It's so useful. I mean, you can graph it on your graphing calculator too. It's just harder to type things in your graphing calculator and get the window, and it doesn't have a nice touch screen where you just like click on the point. Go look at your table. It's not as user friendly. All right, next one. We've got 2 cosine to the 4th x equals cosine squared x. Remember when we are factoring, when we solve by factoring, it has to set equal to 0 first. So yeah, subtract away that cosine squared x from both sides.
Take out cosine.
Factor out, is what you're talking about, like greatest common factor? Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
factor out a cosine.
So factor out the cosine squared x, and we get 2 cosine squared x minus what gets left over here? 1. If you have 2 terms and you take out something, you should still have 2 terms. You can't just drop that minus sign, pretend it doesn't exist. There has to be a placeholder there. So if you're going to distribute it back in, it would equal. All right. So we've got it factored. We can set each factor equal to 0. Cosine squared x equals 0. And 2 cosine squared x minus 1 equals 0. How do I get rid of the squared? You have to square root, but what happens if I square root with a 0?
Plus minus.
And then what happens if I square root with a 0?
0.
Yeah. So that one stays 0. On the other side though, oh, I didn't, no, I'll just finish this side over here. So, and then we already do where cosine was 0? We already did that, right? Over 2 and 3 pi over 2. All right, this other one we're gonna have to add 1, divide by 2. And then we have to square root it. So when you square root, you get plus minus. We get cosine x equals plus minus. It is square root of 2 over 2. We could look at it here, this being square root of 1 over square root of 2, which is 1 over square root of 2, and then you rationalize it. It ends up being square root of 2 over 2. So where is cosine square root of 2 over 2?
5 over 4.
So all pi over 4s,
Yeah.
right? So all 4 of them, right?
Yep.
So we'll have 6 total answers. If you're not sure the order to write your answers, you can draw the picture, and we've got our pi over 4s. Eventually, yeah, they go in order. So there are 6 answers. You draw a circle, and you go around the circle. So the first one that I come to is pi over 4. Then I come to pi over 2. Next is 3 pi over 4. Then 5 pi over 4. And 3 pi over 2. 7 pi over 4.
This is what we were doing yesterday. We're going to factor first.
Yes, exactly what we were doing yesterday. You just practice.
Okay.
So, I mean, you should already be just pulling out all those numbers for me. You should get that part. It's just the first step I'm introducing you. Kind of new. What should we do for this one? I'm kind of factoring. Guess and check. Yeah. And if you don't like it with the cosines in it, you can just make it a U. You could just factor that first if you're not sure. But I know one has to be 2 cosine, the other has to be cosine. And to get a 1 in the second place, they both have to be 1. So that was a pretty easy one to guess and check. So 2 cosine x plus 1 equals 0, and cosine x plus 1 equals 0. And we solve each of those. This one is cosine x equals 0. Cosine x is negative 1. So where is cosine a negative half?
Negative 30. Or 60.
Second quadrant, 60. And third quadrant? I'll write those down in just a second. And then where is cosine negative 1?
0.
No, not 0.
Or, oh,
At pi. So then we have 3 answers. 2 pi over 3, pi, and 4 pi over 3. How do we do the next one? Look carefully, how many terms are there? There are 4 terms, so we're going to do grouping. So you group the first 2 and the last 2 together. You're going to pull out your greatest common factor of the first 2, which is secant x. We have left over 4 cosine squared x minus 3. And we pull out our greatest common factor of the second grouping, so that's 2. And we have left over 4 cosine squared x minus 3. The parentheses have to match if you do it by grouping. They have to be exactly the same. If not, can't factor it. So these are exactly the same. We're going to factor out that parenthesis. And the other parenthesis is secant x plus 2. And then we do factor, set each factor equals 0. and solve each factor. How do I solve for secant again?
I'll take the
We make secant into cosine and then reciprocate the number. Reciprocate does not change negative and positive. It just changes the number by flipping it. And then we would need to know where these are. Is it okay if I move on?
Yep.
Because this is what you practice a lot with. We're going to write all our answers in there. I can add the answers in if you want to check them. I can tell you the answers if you want to check them. I just want to get you to your assignments. What are these? These are 60 degrees and 30 degrees. There's only 2 of them for now.
Yep.
All right, how do we do this one?
Well, we gotta make it equal 0.
Has equals 0. So move the stuff over. And then there's 4 terms. When I group these, I always make sure there's a plus sign in the middle. Because if you put a minus sign in the middle, it messes with your original question. You'll end up getting it wrong half the time. So instead of a minus sign, I just make this plus a negative. That way when I put my groups in, it doesn't change anything about that 2. Oops, I messed up. Oh, shoot. There we go. So I have the plus sign in between. Out of the first parenthesis, we're going to take out cosecant squared and left with cosecant x minus 2. Well, then whatever we take out of the second parenthesis has to make it match the first parenthesis. So what are we going to take out? You're going to take out a -1, so we change both of the signs. And then we have cosecant x minus 2 and cosecant squared x minus 1 as our factored form. Then what do we do? Set each factor equal to 0. And solve for x, right? I'm doing a terrible job of writing. That says 5 or 6 and 5 or 6. And then this one ends up being a big mistake. There we go. That one ends up being where's sign 1 or -1? Pi over 2 or 3 pi over 2. And then those would all be our answers, just put in the correct order. Okay, the assignment is the worksheet. There are 2 typos on the worksheet. I'm going to put those typos up on the board. They're just super easy, quick fixes. One of them is on question 7.
Yeah.
The other one's question 10. It's just missing a number. I didn't even leave space for it. So. And there should be a 2 as a coefficient of your second term on number 7. Otherwise, you're going to come to me with questions tomorrow, which is totally fine. If you don't write this down, you will not be able to factor it. And then for question 10, make that a plus sign. Or you won't be able to factor it. All right, you guys work on it. You ask me questions. I'm going to come around and help where you need it.